Hi golfers, Nick here from Untitled Golf. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on golf tips. This week on golf tips, I'm going to answer one of my Facebook followers' questions, Toby. He asked me about the wrist cock in the stack and tilt golf swing. So before we go into that, I just want to explain to you that there's two movements by the wrists in the golf swing. So you have the hinging motion and you have a rolling motion as well. Today we're just going to talk about the hinging motion. Both are important and both play their part, but I'm just going to talk to you about the wrist hinge movement in the golf swing. So from setup, your wrists are already going to be set in a certain angle. So if you look at the way I set up here, you can see there's already some degree of hinge. You don't really want to be setting up like that unless you're trying to play a specific shot. Generally, if you put the hands up a little bit higher, that's generally going to give that club face a faster rate of closure as you hit through. So if I really wanted to hit a low left shot, I'd probably have my hands up a bit higher, and it's the same if I had them set lower with more hinge. That's likely to sort of open the face and hit higher shots as you hit through. So Toby asked me the question about the wrist hinge, and I said to him that the wrist hinge gradually throughout the backswing and into the start of the downswing as well. So I'm just going to try and explain that while I'm here today. So from setup, we're going to look at this from the face-on view. So as I start my backswing, if I didn't hinge my wrists, I would have quite a long, wide arc here going back. So I've not really hinged my wrists. If I hinge my wrists a lot, by the time I get to here, my hands haven't passed my body. So we probably want to be somewhere in between in the backswing. But I think the most important thing is into the downswing, which I'll come into in a little while. So as I go back, my wrists gradually start hinging up to the top. And by the time I get to sort of left arm parallel, this club's maybe just short of 90 degrees, somewhere around there. And then by the time I get to the top, they keep hinging. Now, roughly 90, we should be looking for roughly a 90-degree angle between my left forearm and the club shaft. Now from this point, as we start down, those wrists should continue to hinge. So by the time you get to left arm parallel on the downswing, this gap is actually, or this angle is more like 70 degrees. So on the way back, it was more there, and on the way down, it's getting slightly narrower to this point. And then from this point, then they'll start to sort of unhinge as they come in to hit the golf ball. So problems that can occur is if you don't hinge your wrists enough in the backswing. In my experience, what tends to happen is as the club gets closer to the top, the golfer will start to bend their arm to get the club round, or as they get to the top, they'll sort of collapse the arm or break down the wrists and sort of have all that hinging motion at the end of the swing, as opposed to gradually, progressively throughout the course of the backswing. So if we look at this angle now, you can see as I take the club back, my wrists are starting to do this movement here, just gradually. Notice as I go back, there's a few movements happening here as I take my backswing. My left shoulder is actually moving, starting to move down. My left knee's starting to go forward and my back one's starting to straighten. And my hands are starting to move in as I sort of hinge my wrists as I go back. So if I take it to the top here, so I've got that 90-degree angle, and as I start down, I'm going to try and, if I can, try and maintain that angle. I don't want to cast it out that way. So one of the big problems I see that in golfers, number one, is they probably don't hinge their wrists enough. And a lot of golfers that have their left arm breaks down so it bends, or they overswing, generally they're probably not hinging enough earlier on in the swing, but that's another matter. What is important is as we start down, that you don't start to lose this angle immediately in the downswing. You want to try and maintain this wrist angle, try and maintain a little bit of lag, make sure by the time we come down to this point, this club still is less than 90 degrees from the left forearm. If it's over 90 degrees there, the likelihood is by the time you get down to this position, there's going to be a bit of daylight here, and the likelihood is that club's going to sort of bottom out before the golf ball. So you're either going to fat it or thin it, or in some cases, a lot of golfers, they'll start to bend the arms, which is really hard to control. If you look at some of the best golfers at this position here, this is a really key position. You can see how my low body weight's on the left, but also my hands are now covering my right thigh, and also sort of the butt of the club's almost over the golf ball. If you look at someone like Sergio Garcia, probably the best ball striker in the world, as he starts down, he keeps hinging, his club shaft almost hits his shoulder as he starts down, and then by the time he's here, he's got all that lag and power stored into his swing, so it delivers sort of a forward shaft lean as he comes through. So the most important thing is the impact position, and there's various ways to hinge the wrist. Some golfers do it more than others, but if you really want to look for these key points, make sure at the top of the swing it's roughly 90 degrees with the arms, this left arm pretty straight. My elbows sort of stay. Another key thing is trying to keep the elbows close together. I find that golfers that start flexing the arms too early, when the elbows pull apart, then they start to lose all the structure in their swing. This arm breaks down and they'll probably cast it, and they probably won't hinge the club properly. So it's important you keep the elbows close together. Recently I was helping someone with their golf swing in terms of hinging their wrists, and I used a ball between their forearms, and that really got them the feeling of doing that. So maybe if you can get hold of some sort of ball between your arms or something like that. I use a smart ball, I think they're brilliant. It just helped that golfer really get the feeling of hinging his wrist a lot earlier, setting the club a lot earlier. It kept his swing more compact because he was tending to really break the left arm down, and then from there he was sort of casting it from the top. So I find that if you can set the wrist a little bit earlier and maintain them in the start of the downswing, you're probably going to strike the golf ball better. So Toby, I hope that tip helps. I hope it covered your question. If you've got any more questions on that, post them in the box below. And golfers out there, if you've got any tips you want me to cover over the coming weeks, post them in the box below and I can see what I can do. And hopefully you can strike the golf ball well. So let's give it a go. Okay, something like that. So golfers, give that tip a go. Let me know how you get on. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It's absolutely free to do so. And you can follow me on my other social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.